Have you ever felt unsettled, even when life seems fine on the surface? What if your pursuit of success, happiness, or peace was built on a false foundation from the start? And what if the real reason you suffer isn't out there in the world, but right inside your own mind? In this human life, almost everyone, at some point, feels a vague unease, a lingering restlessness, a sense that something is off, even when everything looks perfectly fine on the outside. We chase happiness in every possible way, through achievements, possessions, relationships, or building a self-image we can be proud of. But no matter how much we accomplish, no matter how polished our life may appear, there's often a silent emptiness inside, a feeling that something essential is still missing. And this isn't because we failed, or because life is unfair. It's because from the very beginning, our perception of life has been distorted, clouded by ignorance, shaped by illusions, born from a mind that clings, grasps, and always wants more. This ignorance, this inability to see things as they truly are, is the very root of all suffering. When we don't see clearly, our mind attaches itself to fleeting forms, desires things that are inherently incomplete, and reacts blindly to life's constant changes. In truth, suffering doesn't come from what happens around us. It comes from how our mind misunderstands and mishandles reality, and that's exactly why insight meditation, known as Vipassana, was born. It's not a theory, not a belief, but a path of seeing clearly with our own inner eyes. It awakens the natural wisdom within each of us by encouraging direct observation of body and mind in real time as they constantly shift, age, rise, and fall. Without this kind of clarity, we are caught in endless loops, chasing joy, fleeing pain, gaining something today only to lose it tomorrow. No matter how high we climb or how much we learn, our minds remain shackled by anxiety. Why? Because everything we gain is fragile, impermanent, dissolving moment by moment. And even the most intelligent person, without true insight, cannot escape the deeper instincts of greed, aversion, and delusion, invisible forces that quietly steer every action and emotion. That's why, for anyone who sincerely longs for a kind of freedom untouched by circumstances, a peace not shaken by life's highs and lows, this path of insight is not optional. It's essential. No one can walk it for you. No divine hand can place wisdom inside you. Liberation only comes through the light of direct knowing, a clear seeing untouched by mental noise and imagined stories. This, right here, is where the journey begins, not in some distant retreat, not in another lifetime, but now, in this very breath, this very body, this fleeting thought. Many people, when they hear the word meditation, picture someone sitting in stillness, eyes closed, motionless, calm. In popular culture, meditation is often reduced to a tool for relaxation or a method to quiet the mind. But insight meditation is far more than that. It doesn't aim merely to silence your thoughts. It strives to reveal the truth, to help you see with piercing clarity the true nature of body, mind, and world, and from that seeing, wisdom is born. But to grasp what insight meditation truly is, we first need to understand the two major streams within Buddhist meditation practice: concentration and insight. Concentration practice, or samatha, focuses on anchoring the mind to a single object, the breath, a visual form, or a sacred phrase, to develop calmness, stability, and focus. Now let's look deeper into how this differs from the path of insight. As we explored before, insight meditation isn't about escaping reality. It's about seeing it clearly. But to see with clarity, the mind needs a certain steadiness. That's where concentration meditation plays a crucial role. The aim of concentration practice is to cultivate deep mental stillness, a state where the usual inner turbulence settles down, allowing a profound sense of peace to emerge. In these rare, quiet states, One can taste a joy that isn't dependent on outer circumstances. This serenity isn't forced. It arises naturally when the mind becomes calm and collected, and this is incredibly valuable. Such mental tranquility acts like fertile soil, softening the mind and making it more receptive. It helps tame coarse reactions like greed and anger, providing a stable ground for wisdom to grow. But the path of insight goes further. It doesn't stop at stillness. Instead, it uses that stability as a foundation to observe the unfolding of body and mind with sharp, present awareness, moment by moment. Unlike concentration, insight practice doesn't require the mind to be perfectly silent. Whether the experience is peaceful or restless, pleasant or painful, every sensation, emotion, or thought becomes an opportunity to observe the truth of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Rather than fighting discomfort, we turn toward it. We look directly. And in doing so, illusions start to unravel. It's through this quiet observation that some of the deepest false beliefs begin to dissolve. Beliefs about control, permanence, and the self. Many people mistakenly assume that insight practice means thinking about impermanence or analyzing the concept of selflessness, but it's not an intellectual exercise. Insight is experiential. It's not something you imagine or reason your way into. It's what you come to see for yourself, directly, through unfiltered, raw observation of how things arise, change, and pass away. This clarity doesn't come from imagination. It comes from witnessing over and over the truth of change and the absence of any fixed essence behind what we call me. This kind of seeing demands a special kind of attention. It must be sharp, yet gentle, steady, yet effortless. Like sunlight, awareness doesn't need to judge or fix anything. It simply illuminates, touching everything it meets without clinging or pushing away. When the mind maintains this kind of bare attention, something remarkable begins to happen. Layers of ignorance start to fall away. You no longer get tricked into believing that I am the one feeling this, or I am the thinker of these thoughts. Instead, you begin to see that all these are simply natural processes, physical and mental events flowing according to their own nature, without a central controller behind them. One of the common misunderstandings about insight meditation is that it's only for advanced practitioners or those with special spiritual capacities, but that couldn't be further from the truth. While mental stability does help, insight can begin from the simplest acts of everyday awareness. Anyone, yes, anyone, who knows how to direct their attention properly can start seeing reality more clearly. Step by step, illusion starts to loosen. Grasping begins to fade. And when that happens, something beautiful occurs. The mind lets go. Not through effort, but through understanding. And from that letting go, wisdom shines naturally, like sunlight emerging from behind a dissipating fog. Though the path of insight may begin with small steps, to walk it fully requires the right foundation, just as a house needs a firm base before its upper floors can rise. To go deeper into insight practice, we must first establish the core building blocks. Let's now explore what these three foundational elements are and why they matter more than most people realize. We ended the last section with an important truth. To deepen your journey in insight meditation, you need a stable foundation. And that foundation is built on three core pillars: ethical conduct, mental concentration, and wisdom. Let's begin with the first, ethical conduct. In the context of this path, it's not about rigidly following a set of moral rules or trying to appear virtuous. It's about aligning your actions, speech, and thoughts with inner clarity and awareness. True ethical living isn't something imposed from the outside. It's a choice to live with intention, to bring simplicity and harmony into your life so that your heart and mind are no longer tangled in the consequences of harmful behavior. When Your actions are rooted in honesty and kindness. Your mind naturally becomes more peaceful. There's less guilt, less inner tension, and with fewer distractions pulling you outward, your awareness can begin turning inward. In this way, ethical conduct becomes like a silent guardian, a boundary that protects the mind from drifting into chaos and restlessness. It quietly prepares the space for mindfulness and wisdom to grow. Living ethically doesn't mean confining yourself in some strict moral cage. Rather, it means choosing a way of life that causes the least harm to yourself, to others, and to the world around you. You don't keep precepts to prove you're a good person. You do it because you understand that harmful habits bring disturbance, not only to your outer world, but also to your inner stillness. And when you begin to release behaviors like lying, harboring anger, indulging in unchecked desire, or acting out of carelessness, you'll feel the change. The mind settles, energy softens, and in that softening, awareness begins to bloom. Ethics, then, isn't just about what you say or do. It's also about the honesty within. There are actions that may look harmless on the surface, but if they spring from greed, arrogance, or deceit, they still leave a trace in your heart. In this light, ethical conduct becomes like a mirror, reflecting back to you the truth of your motives. When your outward behavior and inward intention are in harmony, you walk the path with less confusion and more clarity. Without this alignment, insight practice can become unstable, like walking a dark trail without a lamp, where it's easy to stumble or lose your way. But when ethics becomes your compass, you don't need someone else to watch over you. You see clearly for yourself what leads to suffering and what leads away from it. This kind of morality isn't a burden. It's a living guide, a path toward greater presence and deeper honesty. It invites you to live not just correctly, but meaningfully. And from that kind of inner alignment, something beautiful arises: compassion. When you stop harming others, your inner world becomes gentler. Your heart naturally opens. You don't need to force yourself to be kind. It becomes your natural response. In a life governed by ethical clarity, compassion isn't a goal to reach. It becomes the voice of a heart no longer clouded by lies or ego. Ethics is not a cage. It's liberation from the countless ways your energy leaks through unwise choices. Every time you choose honesty over illusion, every time you pause before acting from impulse, you are giving your mind the space to be still, balanced, and clear. And when this ethical ground is well rooted, the second pillar, concentration, can begin to grow in earnest. Let's now step into the heart of mental stillness and see how it leads us deeper into insight. As we've seen, ethical conduct is the first step toward inner freedom. A freedom grounded not in belief, but in the real release from the harmful consequences of ignorance. Once this moral foundation is set, the next pillar emerges: concentration, or mental steadiness. In the context of insight meditation, concentration doesn't need to reach the deep trance-like states found in advanced meditative absorption. What's essential is cultivating just enough focus so that the mind doesn't wander aimlessly but can rest steadily on what's being observed. A mind that's constantly distracted, jumping from thought to thought, cannot see the subtle workings of body and mind. It's like trying to glimpse the reflection of the sky in a pond that's being stirred by every gust of wind. At the same time, if the mind becomes too rigid, tense from effort, or overly strained in pursuit of stillness, it loses the flexibility required for clear seeing. That's why concentration in insight meditation is not about squeezing the mind into silence, but gently guiding it into a natural, relaxed stability. This kind of steadiness is not dramatic. It doesn't produce supernatural experiences or altered states. Instead, it's simply the ability to remain present, to stay grounded in your own experience without constantly being swept away by thoughts or emotions. When the mind no longer chases every feeling or memory, when it's not clinging to joy or resisting discomfort, That's when mindfulness can do its real work. Concentration, when nurtured properly, isn't about escaping daily life. It's about standing firm in the middle of it. It gives you the strength to face the chaos, not run from it. Imagine standing in a storm, but inside, your heart is still. That's the power of true steadiness. It's the ability to remain rooted in the present with a calm, clear, and open mind. And from that stillness, the third pillar arises: wisdom. Not borrowed knowledge, not clever arguments or memorized teachings, but a direct, illuminating insight that springs from the core of your being. Wisdom in insight meditation isn't something you think your way into. It's not gained by debating the meaning of impermanence or reading about the nature of selflessness. It's something you witness firsthand. Through the quiet, unwavering observation of each sensation, each thought, each rise and fall, until one day it becomes unmistakably clear. Everything changes, everything passes, and nothing can be clung to as me or mine. This clarity doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't speak in words. It dawns like the rising sun, undeniable, steady, real. It's a knowing that needs no explanation because it's grounded in what's been directly seen. And when that insight arises, you no longer view the world through lenses tinted by your fears, your desires, your expectations. You begin to see things as they truly are, not fixed, not permanent, not under anyone's control. The truth of impermanence doesn't need to be repeated like a mantra, because it becomes as obvious as the breath moving in and out of your chest, as natural as the passing of a thought through your mind. This kind of wisdom doesn't offer you a new world to cling to. It doesn't build new beliefs. Instead, it helps you step out of every illusion you've ever held, even the spiritual ones. And with that, seeing comes a deeper kind of freedom, a freedom not given, not taken, but discovered. Next, let's look at how this path of wisdom transforms not just the mind, but the very way we experience life itself. As we touched upon earlier, true wisdom is not something you acquire. It's something you uncover. And in that clarity, you begin to realize something profound. Freedom was never far. It's always been right here, quietly waiting in the heart of the present moment. Beyond the foundational trio of ethics, concentration, and insight, there are several essential inner qualities that nourish your practice, like sunlight nourishes a tree. These aren't extra, they're the silent forces that sustain your growth on this path. Patience, diligence, honesty, and the art of letting go all serve as inner companions on the journey. Patience keeps you steady when things get difficult. When your practice feels dull, or your mind is restless, or progress seems invisible, patience holds the space. Diligence ensures that your mindfulness isn't a flicker, but a steady flame, a continuous awareness that doesn't fade in and out with mood or convenience. And then, perhaps most critically, there is honesty, the raw, unfiltered willingness to face yourself as you are. Because if the mind still hides from discomfort, still wears masks, or tries to decorate reality with pleasant fantasies, then insight cannot take root. You have to meet what's true, not what's comfortable. And just as important is the ability to release expectations. Wanting rapid progress, yearning for mystical states, craving to awaken soon, these desires quietly distort the practice. Releasing them allows your awareness to remain pure and unforced, like a clear stream flowing at its own pace. You practice not to arrive at something extraordinary, but to see what's already here, without the fog of hope or fear. Another key support on this path is a proper understanding of the goal of insight meditation. If you enter this journey, hoping to gain personal power, to collect special experiences, or to sharpen the ego with new accomplishments, you will find yourself drifting off course. This practice doesn't aim to make the self more powerful. It aims to reveal that the self was never solid to begin with. It's not about adding more knowledge to your mind. It's about subtracting, letting go, shedding the layers of illusion that have covered the mind for so long. At its core, this is a path of release, not accumulation. A journey of simplification, not sophistication. The success of insight meditation doesn't depend solely on technique. It's shaped by your inner posture, the way you relate to practice, to life, and to yourself. Ethics, concentration, and wisdom are not separate tools. They are three legs of the same tripod, each one essential to keep the path upright and steady. When these foundations are truly in place, insight meditation transforms. It stops being a dry technique. It becomes a living current, something that flows through you, with you, and as you. And step by step, it leads you into a territory of true freedom, untouched by circumstance, untouched by grasping. To awaken wisdom through observation, you must actively cultivate and sustain certain core qualities during every moment of practice. These aren't robotic techniques you apply. They're vibrant, evolving qualities of mind, shaped slowly through sincere effort and lived experience. The first and perhaps most vital of these is mindfulness. But mindfulness here is not merely knowing I'm breathing or I'm walking. In the realm of insight, mindfulness means directly, vividly recognizing what's happening in your body and mind as it happens, without turning away. Not judging, not analyzing, just seeing. Mindfulness works like a lamp switched on in a dark room, revealing everything as it is. Whether what's revealed is pleasant or painful, smooth or stormy, when this light is present and steady, you begin to notice patterns and reactions that once happened on autopilot. And walking beside mindfulness is another key quality: clear comprehension. If mindfulness is being present with what is, then clear comprehension is knowing the context, knowing why you're paying attention, and recognizing the direction you're headed. In the next section, we'll explore how this awareness, when guided by clarity and purpose, becomes the force that transforms observation into wisdom. As we explored, mindfulness gives you the light to see clearly, and clear comprehension gives you the wisdom to know what you're seeing. But the depth of transformation lies in how these two work together in every moment of awareness. When you observe an emotion, say anger, mindfulness lets you recognize this is anger. But clear comprehension takes it a step further. It reveals the nature of that anger, that it arose because of certain conditions, that it's impermanent, and that there's no solid self behind it. What you thought was your anger becomes just a passing storm, not something you need to become or defend. When these two qualities, mindfulness and clear comprehension, merge seamlessly, they form a stream of lucid observation. And this stream is the very ground from which liberating insight emerges. But another essential quality must also be cultivated: equanimity, the gentle art of letting go. As you practice, you'll encounter all sorts of experiences. Some are pleasant, others uncomfortable. Some days your mind feels bright and clear, while other times it's heavy or confused. Moments of joy might visit unexpectedly, only to be followed by waves of frustration or boredom. If you haven't trained the mind to rest in equanimity, it will naturally react, clinging to what feels good, resisting what feels unpleasant, chasing after certain states and avoiding others. And these reactions, subtle as they may be, distort your ability to see things as they are. Letting go, in this context, doesn't mean becoming numb or indifferent. It's not turning away from life. It's turning toward it with deep balance. You acknowledge what arises, you understand it, but you don't let preference or aversion color the seeing. There's no struggle to hold or push anything away. Alongside equanimity, you'll also need to develop the ability to directly observe the marks of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self in all phenomena. This doesn't mean sitting, there, and repeating mental slogans about impermanence. It means actually seeing it, witnessing with your own awareness how sensations appear and vanish, how thoughts rise and dissolve, how each breath is born and dies. A feeling arises and shifts. A memory flashes and disappears. Even a mental state like sadness or irritation comes into being, lingers for a moment, then fades, often without you doing anything at all. When your observation becomes that fine-tuned, you start to see not only change but also the suffering hidden in your attempts to hold on. Why is there suffering? Because what's impermanent cannot be possessed, and the more you try, the more it slips through your fingers. And then comes the most liberating realization of all. There is no fixed self behind these processes, no one in control, just causes and conditions unfolding like waves on the ocean with no separate me directing the flow. But none of this can be seen without two final inner companions, honesty and humility. Honesty, because you must be willing to see yourself, all of yourself, not just the parts that feel noble or spiritual. You must dare to witness your confusion, your delusions, your attachments, not to judge them, but to truly meet them. Without this raw sincerity, insight cannot grow, and humility because the path doesn't belong to you. The truth isn't something you conquer. When you're humble, you open to the vastness of experience. You stop measuring progress or clinging to glimpses of special states. You rest in the not knowing, and paradoxically, that's when wisdom deepens. All of these qualities, mindfulness, clear comprehension, letting go, wise contemplation, sincerity, and humility, are not separate. They are like threads in a tightly woven fabric. Together, they form the resilient foundation that allows the path of insight meditation to unfold toward the blossoming of inner freedom and wisdom. Although this journey points toward the profound truth of existence, the first steps begin with something utterly ordinary, not exotic, not mystical, just here, now. In the next part, we'll return to the beginning and look closely at how insight practice truly begins, in the simplicity of daily life. This path doesn't require you to abandon your life or chase extraordinary experiences. In fact, it begins exactly where you are, within your body and mind in this very moment. One of the most accessible and foundational practices is observing the breath. The natural breath, untouched, uncontrolled, is the perfect object to cultivate mindfulness. You don't need to manipulate it, stretch it, or shorten it. You simply sit still, in a relaxed but upright posture. Let your body settle. Let your gaze be soft or gently closed. And then, with full attention, bring your awareness to the breath, perhaps where it enters and leaves the nostrils, or where the abdomen rises and falls. As the breath moves in and out, your only task is to know that it does. No need to change anything. Just recognize breathing in, breathing out. Of course, the mind will wander. That's what minds do. When it happens, you don't scold or rush. You gently notice it has drifted and invite it back to the breath again and again. Through this simple act of returning, the mind slowly becomes steadier, more alert, and more capable of noticing subtle shifts. Once some stability is present, you expand your observation to include the body. But the body isn't a fixed object. It's alive with constant sensation, warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, lightness, heaviness, vibrations, and more. You begin to notice these sensations just as they are, without clinging to what's pleasant or pushing away what's not. The body no longer feels like me. It becomes a dynamic flow of ever-changing experience, arising and dissolving on its own. Observing the body in this way brings to light its impermanent and non-personal nature, not as a theory, but as direct experience. Next, the practice deepens into the realm of feeling tones, what are known as feeling tones. These are the subtle flavors of experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, the quiet undertones beneath every moment of contact with life. These tones might seem minor, but they drive most of our behavior. A pleasant tone sparks desire. An unpleasant tone fuels resistance. Neutral tones often lead to boredom or disconnection. In insight meditation, you learn to observe this entire chain. A sensation arises, a feeling tone emerges, the mind reacts. But now, instead of being swept away, you simply see it. You witness the craving as it starts. You see the aversion as it tightens. And through this seeing, something beautiful begins to unfold. The mind no longer needs to chase or resist. The grip softens. Letting go happens on its own, not as a tactic, but as a natural response to wisdom. From here, practice moves inward again, into the heart of the mind itself. You begin observing your current mental states directly. Greed, anger, confusion, joy, fatigue, doubt, clarity, awareness. You don't need to fix them. You don't even need to judge them. You simply recognize them. This is anger. This is joy. This is restlessness. No suppression, no indulgence, just clear knowing. So when irritation appears, instead of pushing it down or acting on it, you acknowledge irritation is here. And when clarity arises, you note it without grasping. Clarity is here. Over time, this bare awareness reveals something astonishing. These states are not yours. They come and go. They arise and pass based on conditions. You don't control them, and you don't need to become them. And then, the scope of observation expands once more to all phenomena, physical and mental, as part of a vast web of interdependent causes and conditions. This is when you no longer see just isolated experiences, but begin to perceive the full process of becoming, birth, change, death, happening across every dimension of your being. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into this unfolding vision and see how the practice of insight leads us to encounter the entire fabric of life with open eyes and a liberated heart. As your insight deepens, you begin to witness not just isolated sensations, but entire sequences. The arising of contact at the sense doors, the birth of feeling, the emergence of craving or aversion, and the chain of actions that follows. What once felt automatic now reveals itself as a process, unfolding step by step. Through this clear seeing, the mind begins to gently loosen the tight knots of habitual reaction. No longer are things perceived as separate objects or fixed realities. Instead, you see everything as streams of conditioned events, flowing in and out, connected yet empty of any solid self behind them. One of the most essential principles in insight meditation is non-interference. You're not trying to create a special state, force stillness, or push unpleasantness away. You don't chase after joy, nor do you reject discomfort. You simply observe. And that simplicity is powerful. Why? Because truth only reveals itself when the mind stops projecting its preferences onto reality. This approach also includes a shift in inner attitude. It invites you to hold yourself with unconditional patience. There's no need to rush, no need to prove anything. Observation becomes soft yet precise, like watching a flower bloom without pulling on its petals. Beneath it all lies a quiet trust that if you continue with sincere practice, insight will ripen in its own time, as naturally as fruit on a well-watered tree. That's why insight meditation isn't a battle against yourself. It's not a chase for mystical experiences. It's a return to the simplicity of the here and now, to the breath as it is, the step beneath your feet, the moment as it unfolds. And from these ordinary moments, something extraordinary begins to open the doorway to inner freedom. But make no mistake, the path of insight rarely unfolds in a sudden flash. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment of awakening. It's more like the quiet life of a seed, first resting in the soil, then slowly sprouting, reaching toward the light, forming leaves, blossoming into something whole. Understanding this natural rhythm is essential. It keeps your patience steady and your trust strong. In the beginning stages, you'll likely become acutely aware of just how restless and scattered the mind really is. Thoughts rush in, memories pop up, worries, hopes, distractions, all jostling for space. The attention flits from one thing to the next, never staying still for long. You might even feel overwhelmed or discouraged, but strangely enough, this recognition is a sign of progress. Seeing the chaos clearly is the first step. Before peace can arrive, the storm must be acknowledged, and for that, immense patience is needed. Because you're doing something most people never do. You're choosing to stop running, to turn and face the present moment as it truly is. Then, something shifts. As mindfulness is maintained and the practice matures, the mind starts to settle. Gradually, the scattered attention begins to gather. There are longer stretches of stillness. Moments of presence begin to lengthen, and in this growing calm, something else emerges, the direct perception of impermanence. You don't read about impermanence. You see it. The breath changes constantly. Sensations rise and vanish. Moods come and go like weather passing through the sky. This isn't theory. It becomes direct, intimate experience. And it's here, in this living encounter with change, that the next stage of understanding begins to dawn. Let's now move into that deeper unfolding, to see how awareness continues to evolve as the mind becomes even more attuned to the truth of reality. As your awareness becomes more refined, something profound happens. You no longer need to remind yourself that everything is impermanent. The impermanence reveals itself. The arising and vanishing of each moment becomes clear, like waves appearing and disappearing upon the ocean's surface, all illuminated by the steady light of mindfulness. In this deepening stage, insight sharpens. You begin to recognize not just impermanence, but also the very nature of suffering. You see how nothing, no matter how beautiful, how peaceful, how desirable, can offer lasting fulfillment. Everything changes. Everything fades. And anything the mind clings to will eventually slip away. Whether it's a comforting thought, a joyful feeling, or a blissful mental state, if you hold on to it, suffering will follow. Because all that is born must pass. And this seeing is not intellectual. It's felt. It hits the heart. It reshapes how you relate to life. And as the practice deepens further, a greater realization dawns. The truth of non-self. There is no permanent I orchestrating thoughts, emotions, or sensations. The body and mind are not possessions, not controlled by some hidden self. Instead, they move in patterns, conditioned by causes, like a river flowing without a fixed source. This insight begins to dissolve the illusion of identity, not with force, but with understanding. At this point, something remarkable takes root. A natural dispassion arises, not as apathy, not as cold detachment, but as a quiet, graceful letting go. You no longer feel the urge to chase after experiences or cling to identities. The need to define, control, or accumulate fades. It's not that you stop caring, you simply stop grasping. It feels like unstrapping a heavy backpack you didn't know you were carrying. The relief is undeniable. The mind becomes open, unburdened, steady, able to stand amidst life's changes without being shaken. Because now you see. There's nothing you truly need to hold on to, and no one who needs to hold on. Though insight meditation may appear simple on the outside, just sitting, breathing, observing, its inner workings are delicate, precise, and deeply transformative. And because of this subtlety, the practice can easily be derailed without careful guidance and ongoing honesty. Without these, common mistakes begin to surface. One of the most widespread is striving for results. Many practitioners, especially in the early stages, bring into meditation the same ambition they apply to everything else, the drive to succeed. But this goal-oriented mindset, even when dressed up in the language of mindfulness or awakening, is still fueled by craving. The object may have changed from material gain to spiritual achievement, but the habit of grasping remains intact. When this craving creeps in, your observation loses its softness. The mind becomes rushed, rigid, and subtly dishonest. You don't see reality anymore. You only see your hopes and projections. And slowly, meditation becomes performance, not presence. It turns into a clever trick of the mind, satisfying, perhaps, but not liberating. Another common trap is the confusion between direct observation and subtle imagination. As mindfulness becomes more sensitive, it's not unusual for refined mental images, symbols, or abstract sensations to arise. But if you're not vigilant, it's easy to get swept up in interpreting, analyzing, or embellishing these moments, mistaking thought for truth. This confusion often masquerades as depth, but in reality, it's a detour, a scenic route that may feel meaningful but leads you away from the raw, unfiltered simplicity of actual experience. So how do we stay on track? That's what we'll explore next. The qualities that protect your practice, refine your awareness, and keep the path of insight truly grounded. As we saw earlier, when the mind becomes too eager, it starts interpreting instead of simply observing. What begins as clear awareness can quickly be clouded by the need to label, to analyze, or to make something special out of an experience. You may see a light during meditation, a subtle glow, a sensation of openness, and instead of just recognizing it as it is, the mind jumps in. This must be a sign of enlightenment. I've reached a higher stage. But this subtle storytelling, this habit of overlaying meaning onto raw experience, quietly disrupts the pure flow of observation. And when the purity of seeing is lost, insight cannot arise. Another frequent pitfall appears when the meditator becomes attached to pleasant states. At times, your practice may naturally lead to feelings of peace, clarity, or a sense of vast spaciousness. These are the natural fruits of mindfulness. But if you begin to crave these states, to chase them, or cling to them, you fall into the same trap. The grasping may feel refined, but it still obscures truth. Clinging to pleasantness is just as disruptive as resisting discomfort. Both are subtle forms of interference. Both distort the natural unfolding of phenomena. In insight meditation, no state, pleasant or unpleasant, is to be held onto. All are to be seen simply for what they are, momentary, arising and passing, not to be owned or exaggerated. A deeper danger comes when the practice is not rooted in ethical living and basic mental steadiness. Without a solid moral foundation, the mind becomes restless, burdened by guilt, or drawn into subtle, unwholesome tendencies. In such a state, even if you sit in meditation, your mindfulness won't have the depth or stability needed to sustain real insight. Similarly, if the mind is too agitated, scattered without even a touch of concentration, your observation will constantly be broken. It's like trying to watch a river while being pushed around by the wind. You catch fragments but miss the flow. This is why a clean, ethical lifestyle and a stable mind are not optional extras. They are the fertile ground from which clarity can grow. Without them, your attention will falter and your insights will be distorted. There is another subtle misstep that many practitioners fall into: fabricating spiritual experiences to feel progress. When you sense that your practice seems ordinary, The ego can sneak in and inflate minor sensations into signs of deep attainment. This isn't done maliciously, often it's unconscious, but it reveals a powerful truth. The ego will try to survive even in the domain of meditation. It clings to achievement. It needs to feel special. But liberation isn't about collecting impressive moments. It's about letting go of the need for them altogether. Real wisdom sees every experience, and no matter how dazzling or dull, as just that, an experience. Born, passing, empty. Perhaps the most refined trap of all is using meditation to escape. Many come to the practice hoping it will silence their pain, remove sadness, or eliminate fear. But that's not what insight meditation is for. It doesn't sweep your emotions away. It doesn't promise a life without discomfort. What it does offer is something far more powerful: the ability to face everything, joy, sorrow, confusion, longing, with open eyes and an undisturbed heart. It teaches you to see, not to suppress. To understand, not to escape. So don't fear these mistakes. Don't let them discourage you. They're not signs of failure. They are part of the learning. Recognizing them is part of the path. Every stumble is a doorway to deeper awareness, if you dare to stay with it. In the next part, we'll take this further, exploring how the very challenges you meet in practice can become the fuel for genuine transformation. Just as a lotus rises slowly from the depths of muddy water, untouched by the filth it grew through, true insight blossoms quietly within the heart. But what, exactly, is the fruit of this path? Can insight meditation genuinely change how we live our everyday lives? Understanding the nature of its results is essential to walking the path with clarity and lasting commitment. The very first and most fundamental outcome of insight meditation is not theoretical understanding or borrowed belief. It is living wisdom, a direct and undeniable knowing that arises from intimate contact with reality. Through steady observation of body and mind, you begin to see clearly the nature of all phenomena, their impermanence, their inability to bring lasting satisfaction, and their empty, selfless essence. This type of knowing is nothing like memorized knowledge. It doesn't rely on logic or on trusting what others say. It comes from seeing for yourself. And because it comes from experience, it leaves no room for doubt. It's not belief. It's not a hypothesis. It is a recognition that shifts something deep inside you. A change that no amount of theory could ever bring. As this wisdom deepens, something subtle but powerful begins to happen: letting go. But this letting go doesn't come from moral pressure or forced effort. It isn't a cold rejection of the world. It's the natural result of seeing things as they truly are. The moment you recognize that everything you cling to, whether it's a feeling, an idea, or a possession, is unstable and ultimately unable to satisfy, the grip of attachment begins to loosen on its own. You no longer have to push yourself to release. The heart relaxes naturally, like a clenched fist slowly opening. Just as water flows toward lower ground without instruction, your mind begins to release what no longer serves, simply because it has seen clearly. And then, a deeper shift emerges. The ability to live freely within the world, not by escaping it, but by standing fully within it, without being ruled by it. This freedom is not about abandoning your life, your work, or your loved ones. It is not about running away to a cave. It's the freedom to remain open in the midst of difficulty, to love without fear, to act without being controlled by anger or greed. You still experience joy and sorrow, gain and loss, intimacy and separation. But beneath these waves, you sense a quiet depth that remains untouched, an inner stillness that is no longer moved by surface agitation. This transformation isn't always dramatic. Often, it begins subtly. You no longer chase the next moment. You stop living in anticipation or regret. You begin to dwell in the richness of now. Actions that once felt mechanical, walking, drinking tea, hearing birdsong take on a new texture. They become part of your awakened life. You no longer search for meaning in faraway achievements. The meaning begins to reveal itself in presence, in the simple act of being fully alive. Another quiet but profound fruit of this path is unconditional compassion. When you clearly see how everything is born and passes, how fragile and fleeting all forms are, a tenderness opens within you. You look at yourself, flaws and all, and stop blaming. You look at others, even those who have harmed you, and instead of hatred, you feel understanding. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is caught in the same current of ignorance and suffering. And this recognition softens the heart. It dissolves the walls. Each life, including your own, becomes worthy of gentleness, of patience, of love that asks for nothing in return. In the next section, we'll explore how this awakened presence and compassion become the foundation for a life lived not just with awareness, but with deep integrity and fearless connection. As your vision deepens and compassion blossoms from within, the journey slowly reveals its highest fruit: liberation. But this liberation isn't about escaping life or reaching for some faraway realm. It's not about leaving the world behind. It's about being fully here, in this very life, yet no longer caught in its endless web of clinging and suffering. This freedom cannot be described, nor can it be given. No words can fully hold it. No teaching can hand it over. It must be touched, intimately, personally, by the one who has walked the path. It is found not in doctrines, but in direct seeing. Not in grand ideals, but in gentle letting go. When the mind no longer clings to anything, not to thoughts, not to emotions, not even to spiritual concepts, a vast, silent spaciousness begins to open. Like the sky that has always been there, waiting patiently behind passing clouds. Nothing new is created. Nothing special is added. What was always present is finally seen. Insight meditation, therefore, is not about chasing mystical promises or trying to become someone different. It simply leads you back to the raw truth of this very moment. And from that grounded truth, you begin to realize something radical: that wisdom, freedom, and love were never missing. They've always been here, quietly waiting to be uncovered. All they need is the right seeing. With this understanding, your journey is no longer measured by hours spent sitting, by unusual states experienced, or by how many breakthroughs you've had. Instead, it is marked by each sincere return to yourself, each honest recognition of what is, each gentle release of grasping, even for just one breath, and each of these moments, small and quiet as they may seem, is a real step on the path, each one a blossom rising from the everyday soil of life. This path doesn't require you to argue, to prove, or to impress. It doesn't even ask you to arrive anywhere. It simply invites you to turn inward, to look clearly, and to trust in what is revealed. Insight. Meditation isn't a system of belief. It's not a strategy for gaining rare states. It is a light, coming not from outside, but from your own awareness, softly illuminating the forgotten corners of body and mind, revealing the truth that was always there. And on this path, there are no shortcuts. No one can walk it for you. But if you continue with steadiness, if you stay honest with yourself, if you give your full attention to this unfolding moment, the door to authentic wisdom will quietly begin to open. Presence becomes a sacred imprint, not a promise of something more, but a gentle reminder that freedom isn't a gift to be earned, and wisdom isn't knowledge to be borrowed. They are your birthright, the deepest part of who you are. So wherever you are now, whether near the beginning or well along your path, let me offer you this, a quiet bow of respect. Thank you for walking this path, for choosing to look, to feel, to awaken. No matter how long the road ahead may seem, remember this: the light of insight has never left you. It is always here, patiently waiting for you to pause and see. May you and your loved ones walk in clarity, in strength, and in peace.